President Putin lashed on the Western by telling the African 7 leaders the truth about what is going on in Ukraine. The visit of the 7 African leaders was a good moment for President Vladimir Putin to give his message out there to the world about what is going on in Ukraine. This was a very big opportunity for Vladimir Putin to expose the mafia of the Western. The mission of the 7 African leaders in Ukraine and Russia, it had come to its end. But what did them discuss about? What was this peace negotiation mission all about? What did the president of Ukraine had to say about it? And what did the president of Russia, President Vladimir Putin, said to the 7 African leaders who were presenting the Africa continent in this peace negotiation? A lot is being said already, but without delay, I want you first to watch this video, then I'll be back for more analysis.
We'd like to start off by thanking President Zelensky for allowing the 7 African countries to participate in this peace mission. This is indeed a historic mission in a quest for peace. And I could say that our mission really revolves around 10 key elements. The first one is that we are here to listen both to President Zelensky, and tomorrow we'll be listening to President Putin, and we do so with deep respect for the people of Ukraine, which we have expressed to President Zelensky, but also in recognition of the proposals that they have put forward as a peace formula. Ukrainians feel that they must fight and not give up. The road to peace is very hard. It's not easy. And even Nelson Mandela, when he wrote his book, Long Road to Freedom, he also knew that it was not easy. But at the same time, even when it was most difficult, even for us who felt that we should continue fighting against the apartheid misrulers of our country and we shouldn't give up, he said, we've got to find peace. We've got to make peace, because he also realized, as our leader, that the continuation of the oppression and exploitation by the apartheid government was wreaking a lot of suffering and damage to the people of South Africa. And that's why he said, let us make peace. Knowing that peacemaking is not easy. It is very, very difficult. And I say this not out of disrespect for the people of Ukraine. I do believe that they have a deep sense of feeling, and today we even told President Zelensky that we not only recognize their viewpoint, but we also respect how they feel about the war that's going on. But we also said there is a need to bring this conflict to an end sooner rather than later, because all conflicts do in the end have to come to an end. And the best way is to bring a conflict to an end before everything is lost. And this is the message that we've put forward. And we're also here to share the African perspective, because we have a perspective. Many countries in Africa have had conflicts which have been resolved under very difficult and different circumstances, where people struggled to find peace, but finally knew that peace had to be made and it had to be found, however difficult it is. So without being, minimizing the suffering of the people of Ukraine, we are saying that's the proposal that we're putting on the table. And we rather pleased that President Zelensky has said, yes, let proposals be put on the table so that the march to peace can also have a number of participants. And we as African countries have chosen to be some of those participants and to make our humble, very humble contribution, a contribution that recognizes the many other proposals that have been made. And if you look at a number of the proposals, there are a number of similarities. They connect somewhere, and in the end, there can be a foundation for peace, and we hope that through these efforts we can all join in helping to bring this conflict to an end.
Before we get to comment on what President Ramaphosa said, we need to do some catch-up so that we can both be in the same page to get to understand how did we get here? How did even African leaders have to go over there in order for them to go and negotiate peace for these two countries? Well, as you know for some times now that the whole Africa continent have distanced themselves from this conflict that is taking place between Russia and Ukraine. Therefore, some of these African countries, they've been receiving serious pressure from the Western. When we're talking about Western, we see US with its alliance NATO's. And these people, they've been putting a lot of pressure on African countries because for them, they believe that Africa, we are nothing, and we're still the same Africa that they can get to tell everything on how you have to run your countries, how you have to do your business, who you have to deal with, and who you don't have to be friends with. So, African leaders, they were like, it is about time we get also to engage ourselves in a peace negotiation. Let's try to do these things in our own way and see. Because so far, whether we like it or not, the war is still continuing, and yet there's no one who's coming out as a victorious. But whenever they pass on the media, they are talking about how good they are doing on the field. And they are playing the games of blaming one another. So with all this being said, Africa has to position themselves. But before Africa get to position themselves, we had to go and try to negotiate and see who's willing to listen to us and who's willing to start this peace negotiation. That is the reason why Africa continent, Africa Union, decided to send these 7 African leaders to go and represent the Africa continent, and they can start this negotiation, this peace negotiation. These 7 African leaders, after listening to the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, President Ramaphosa ended up having the impression if like Ukraine don't want to fight, but at the same time they are fighting because they are being motivated by the Western. And that was the reason why he had to come and speak about this.
And in the key elements that I pointed out, I did say that as all of us here, we respect the UN Charter. For us, that is a very important and key charter that unites various countries of the world. And in our discussions with President Putin, we will be talking about the importance of the UN Charter. And we're not the first group that is calling for a peaceful settlement, that has articulated the issue of respect for the sovereignty of countries. Many others have, and so we are also reiterating what has been said. And another key element that I spoke to was that there should be security for all countries, and indeed both countries. They should have a sense of security that their own sovereignty and standing is also secured. And that's another key issue that also needs to be discussed. The quest for peace, in our view, is an important one.
As we all know that South Africa, we've been under pressure from the NATO countries and the ICC for us to arrest Vladimir Putin in his arriving in South Africa during the BRICS summit. Well, that was not all. So this time, as President Ramaphosa was briefing the media, the so-called journalists who were representing the Open Eye Master, they have to come and ask him again this question. Though they know already what is the position of South Africa so far about this matter, but they keep on insisting, asking again the same question. They want to know whether President Vladimir Putin will be arrested in his arriving in South Africa, yes or not, because we're talking about less than 60 days that this BRICS summit will have to take place in Johannesburg. Here, the President Ramaphosa had to send again a loud message to the Western. He could not beat around the bush, but to repeat his words. And he was so firm and determined in what he said. Have a listen.
You're absolutely right. We are proceeding to meet President Putin, and one of the things I'm going to be doing is to have a bilateral meeting with President Putin to discuss the BRICS summit as well. So that matter is still under consideration by ourselves in South Africa, by our government. We are discussing this matter on a continuous basis. And I have said, both in South Africa and elsewhere, that in the end, I am the one who will make the announcement about how this BRICS summit is going to be made. It's going to be held. So that is what we will do. And of course, we are going to be listening, as I said, to President Putin as well. We are going to put forward the various key elements that I articulated to him and have a discussion with him. Like today, we had a very robust and very fulfilling discussion with President Zelensky. If you were a fly on the wall, you would have heard the number of viewpoints that were exchanged between us, because we went into greater details and depth than what you are able to ask us to respond to. So there are many issues that we covered, and as I said, we had a very honest discussion, and we are hoping to have exactly the same with President Putin. Thank you.
Now I'm sure that they are all now lost after listening to what President Ramaphosa had to say, because the man did not change what he had said here in South Africa. You know, because these people, sometimes they think that what you say in your country is something that you'll have to go and change once you are in their land. And that's what they were expecting President Ramaphosa to come perhaps and say that, no, yeah, we're going to arrest Vladimir Putin or say what. No, he repeated exactly what he had said last week, saying that at the end of the day, I'm the one who will communicate about this matter. I'm the one who's going to tell you how these things is going to work at the end of the day. So that is another way of President Ramaphosa telling the Western that you can shout, you can make noise, you can use ICC and try to say whatever you want to say. But remember, South Africa, it is a sovereign country, and we are the one who are going to decide whether Vladimir Putin is coming to South Africa or not. We're not going to let ourselves be told on how to do things in our country. And that is the spirit. That is how you get to deal with this kind of people. So he repeated exactly what he had said before. Let's hope that that will finish this debate and no one will have to come again and ask again this kind of questions. Well, after then, they decided to go to Russia. And obviously they had to go with the same message which they had delivered to the Ukraine government. When they arrived in Russia, obviously they were more welcome over there. I don't know, but come to think of it, I end up realizing that President Putin is trying to put his honor guests in a very comfortable way. When they arrived in Russia, they were even more welcome for the obvious reasons, because remember, Africa continent, they are the only countries that remain at least neutral in all this and not really condemning Russia in everything that is happening in Ukraine. Instead of these other countries that NATO and the US, they have go and try to impose on them to condemn Russia and make Russia look like the bad country. So obviously, someone that you know that they're always supporting you, the moment they come next to you or they are visiting you or they want you to listen to them, obviously you will have to treat them in a very special way, because the treatment that these 7 African leaders did receive in Ukraine, it is not the same. In our previous video, we spoke on how the government of South Africa were humiliated by blocking some of the security personnel of the President Cyril Ramaphosa in Poland. And we all know that Poland is a member of the NATO. So obviously they had to give the security personnel of President Cyril Ramaphosa a hard time, because for them they think that whatsoever was in that cargo was maybe could be some of the weapons that South Africa have to go and provide to supply to Russia. So they give South Africa that kind of treatment. That was not even all. We saw on their way to Ukraine, they were humiliated again, packed inside the train. I wonder if it was Joe Biden, who's the president of United States of America, or if it was Emmanuel Macron as the president of France, it was going to be treated in that way. But our leaders were humiliated. They packed them into one train in order for them to go and meet the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. Guys, it was a way of disrespecting them. And I told you already why they are doing all that, but we'll discuss that very soon. So Putin had to treat them in a very good way, because he knows these are people who are supporting him, and he have to treat them well so that they can continue supporting him. Since this African delegation was led by the President Cyril Ramaphosa, obviously is the one who had to speak in behalf of these African leaders. He had to discuss about these 10 elements that he shared with the President Zelensky, and now he has to tell the President Vladimir Putin. What was these 10 elements that African leaders had bring to Moscow? President Ramaphosa had to discuss about the 10 elements that these 7 African leaders had brought to these 2 countries which are having conflict. But in our case, we pay more attention to this particular part of one of these 10 elements, when the President Ramaphosa had to remind them and the United Nations about how we should respect the sovereignty of both countries. And also he spoke about the security that these 2 countries, they both need. We all know that if things have reached to this point, it is because there are a certain category, or should I say a group of in some countries, which feel like Russia was a threat to them, and therefore they had to find a way to come and bring some instability in Russia by threatening the security of Russia. And when Russia starts feeling threatened by these groups of countries, that is when they start reacting in order for them to secure their territories. So President Ramaphosa had to talk about it, and here is what he said.
The 4th point, which has also been covered in a number of other proposals, is that we recognize the sovereignty of countries in terms of the UN Charter. And yes, in terms of that charter, we believe that all of us should work in terms of internationally recognized principles, and it is for that reason that we would like to submit that we recognize the sovereignty of countries in terms of that charter. The 5th point we would like to raise is that there needs to be a guarantee of security for all countries. This matter has been raised on all sides, that all sides want some guarantees, and we agree with that.
After this being said, this message was well welcome. In return, it was now about time for the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, to give also his point of view or what he had to say about this. So in response, this is what Vladimir Putin had to say.
We have been consistently promoting further strengthening of traditionally friendly relations with African countries, and the main regional grouping, the African Union, based on the principles of equality, mutual respect, and non-interference into domestic affairs. This year, our cooperation with African partners on the widest range of issues has been developing rather actively. We are preparing for a landmark event, the 2nd Russia-Africa Summit, to be held soon here in St. Petersburg. I'm confident that at this event we'll set out new prosperous vectors of cooperation in political, trade and economic, scientific and technical, humanitarian and other fields. I would like to stress in particular that Russia has deep respect for the principled position of African states in favor of preventing global and regional stability and security, as well as peaceful conflict settlement and creating a just model of international relations. We support your desire to conduct independent, sovereign and peaceful policy. We welcome the balanced attitude of our African friends with regard to the Ukraine crisis. Distinguished friends, we value your interest to settle the conflict. We immediately accepted your proposal to hold negotiations on Ukraine issue. I know that you have specific ideas and proposals in this context. Together with President of the Republic of South Africa, we discussed it on multiple occasions, and I'm grateful to him for raising these issues. I would like to stress once again we are open for constructive dialogue with all those who wish peace based on the principles of respect for each other's interests as well as justice.
Now that you have listened from both parts, you'll see for yourself that this war, guys, it is not about Ukraine. Putin is willing to stop everything as long the security of his nations will be guaranteed. So in other words, Putin, everything that is happening in Ukraine, it is just a man who's trying to protect himself and his country. Because in his message he said, it's not a problem. Him is not the problem. The problem actually, it is the Western. Because we all know that the one who are using Ukraine in order for them to get to Russia. And the Ukraine people, instead of them understanding that they are being used, they don't want to see that. They let NATO countries to come and lead them, conduct them, tell them what to do. And this is not the first time that this kind of negotiation have to take place. We have so many countries around the world who have tried to ask these two countries to negotiate. And obviously, Russia always be ready to negotiate. But as for Ukraine, they have to go and ask for a permission somewhere. We saw again these same things did happen in March when China almost bring the two countries to the table for negotiation. But just because one of these countries still depending on NATO countries, they had to tell him that, look, you don't have to go and negotiate with Russia when China, as a big partner to Russia, is there to play the middle role. And I had asked you this question to know, if China is not deserved to be a middle role to bring peace between these two nations, who else? Or he has to be only the US as the middle role, because we can see already that they don't have the intention to cease fire in Ukraine. Instead, they want it to be like that. And that is the reason why you are seeing they are putting a lot of money, billions and billions of US dollar in order for them to sponsor Ukraine. But the question is, for how long will this have to continue? For how long will people of Ukraine have to understand that they are being used? Because Russia is ready for negotiation. And Putin had given his conditions, saying that he can cease the fire for now, but as long, first of all, NATO countries, they should stop supplying weapons to Ukraine. Because the more they supply weapons, Russia will have to defend himself as well. He's not going to let them know. On the other side,
he said the weapons NATO has provided are making a difference, and Putin agrees. He says that the war will end and talks will begin if the West stops giving Ukraine weapons.
On the other side, we have NATO who've been supplying weapons to Ukraine. And according to them, they're saying, in order for Ukraine to negotiate with Russia, they should first repossess the land that Russia had took away from them. Now tell me, with all this kind of a strategy that the US with its alliance they are trying to apply, will it ever bring peace between these two countries? I doubt that will never gonna happen anytime soon. Now this is where Africa continent come in. Now let us discuss a little bit about why Africans have to go and find themselves there when we have so many conflicts that we are having inside Africa. Why do they have to put that as priority? Of course, among the 10 elements that they had put on the table, there is also one that really concerns Africans. And President Ramaphosa had said this.
To negotiate an end to this war, because this war is causing a great deal of instability and harm to various countries around the world. And we as African countries are feeling the impact of this war. So this is what we have come here to share with you. And I'd like to end by saying this is a historic mission. The African continent, represented here through the 7 countries, has never really been involved in a mission of this sort. So we would like to say that we've taken this step, believing that, yes, we can contribute, and would like to thank you.
Now the question is that all? Do you think that these African leaders went there just for that, to go and say that, no, look, this crisis is affecting Africa continent, we're having problem with petrol, we're having problem with food, we're having 1, 2, 3, 4. No. Yes, we all know that this crisis between Ukraine and Russia, it had affected the entire world, especially people who've been putting more fire there, such as the Europe countries and even America. Because these people, they don't have anything. America don't have lithium, they don't have gold, they don't have diamond, they don't have petrol. All these things, they usually get it from somewhere else. And the moment Russia has big supply of one of these things, or Ukraine has big supply of one of these things, once they're being affected, obviously the whole world will be affected. So they might pretend to ignore about all these things, but this crisis, this conflict, it had really put everyone in a very big position that no one wants to remain in such a way. But whereas for Africa continent, it was not about what President Ramaphosa has said. This is a diplomacy. We need to have another level of understanding matters. Guys, this is what exactly was their mission over there. As I said at the beginning of this video, Africa, they've been sustaining themselves from all this conflict. Whenever they are being in the UN and they are being asked to vote in favor or against Russia, Africa was just sustaining. They never gave their positions. It was either you vote with Russia or either you just remain neutral. And these people, I'm referring to the NATO countries, that the one who've been voting in favor, like they don't even choose negative. They are the one who've been voting in favor of Ukraine because they know exactly what they are doing over there. So it is about time Africa now get to show their positions. And before they get to show their positions, they had to show the whole world that, look, we have tried this, we did this, and you guys do not listen to us. Therefore, we are now seeing your intention. These are your intentions, and for that reasons, we are going to take this position. And that's what they are doing so far. So we all know that this war is not about Ukraine and Russia. This war is all about US and Russia. It is all about NATO countries and the BRICS countries. And that is how it's going on. Unless maybe you are a politician and you want to have a diplomacy language, but in the open eyes like this, that is how everything looks like on the table. Because it does not make sense that a war which is being in conflict or in the war, and yet it's being supplied with weapons, with everything, instead of you coming with a peace negotiation on the table. You don't want to do so. For an example, what Russia said, it is something that which is very simple. You put a person into a test and see whether they will respect what they are promising or not. For an example, Russia said that NATO countries, they should stop supplying weapons to Ukraine, and then I'll stop also and we'll go for the negotiation. Did them do so? No. Instead, what are they suggesting? They are saying that they are going to fight. They are going to fight until Ukraine have all his land. Until Ukraine have all its lands. Well, will Russia also just stand there and look at them doing that? No, because they know already that their mission in Ukraine is to make sure that NATO come and take over Ukraine. And that is what Russia don't want it to happen. So African leaders, even though they are going there, they know very well that these things is not going to succeed in their favor. They know already the position of Russia on this one. And they know also that it is going to be very challenging for Ukraine to do what is promising them, because they know that Ukraine is not depending on themselves. There is someone who have to say the last word on this Ukraine people. On my point of view, I don't think that it was a good idea to negotiate this peace negotiation with Ukraine. They should have gone and negotiate to the right people who are fighting. They should have gone and negotiate with US, NATO and Russia, so that Ukraine will be considered as the victim, because that is how things look like on the table. Negotiating with Ukraine, they don't have the last word to say. Go and negotiate with NATO countries and tell them that, guys, we know what you guys were up to. Therefore, we are suggesting this for peace, because people are dying. Now you are going to negotiate with Ukraine, knowing that Ukraine is being supplied by NATO countries. Even if Ukraine, they are willing to to negotiate this peace, do you think that NATO, who already spent so much of billion of money, they'll end up accepting it? Because if they accept it, that will be their defeat. For them, they'll be like, okay, Putin have defeated us. Because Putin's mission was to make sure that Ukraine don't join NATO. And if they succeed that, then which means them they are lost. So the right person to negotiate with in all this supposed to be NATO country, US, because they're the one who are the godfather to Zelensky, and they need to talk to them and tell them that, no, look, it is about time you guys, you cool down whatsoever you are planning to do, because people are dying in Ukraine. That is how you're supposed to do. But they did not do so. They went to Ukraine and talked to Ukraine. Of course, that message had reached to NATO countries. Now, obviously, we know NATO countries, they're not gonna ever listen. That one we can even, I can even bet my life on it. NATO countries, they will never listen to Africans, because in their mind they consider Africa continent as we are, if like we still their slaves. They consider Africa continent like, no, it is a place whereby we get to give our point of view, that it is our point of view that count them the most. They don't care about our opinions. So they will disobey and not listen to this message that NATO, I mean the 7 leaders of African Union, they had tell them about. And once they do that, that is what is going to motivate Africa continent to now go more official and start supporting the country which was willing to collaborate with them, the country which had they had accepted their proposal of peace negotiation, and that will obviously to be Russia. And once that happens, it will even revolt almost a lot of countries around the world, whereby they'll be like, okay, it's about time now we change our side. We are no longer going to be neutral. We're going to support this country or this this group or organizations that we feel like it is more safe for them. And that's how things are going to happen in the near future. We shall wait and see. Obviously, they'll be releasing the final decisions that they had took, and as President Ramaphosa had promised that this thing will have to continue, because it's a peace negotiation. So it has to continue until the end, so that they'll conclude. If it happened that Africa continent will succeed to bring peace between these two nations, well, bravo. That will be something very beautiful. At least it will also show the world that Africa, we are not what people think of us out there. Instead, we are people who can come up with some good ideas and bring some peace around the world. But if they reject it, then they might just be ready to also not blame Africa, because there won't be any African country who will accept again all these threatening sanctions that they've been trying to impose on African countries, because they have decided to remain neutral in this conflict. We are looking forward to that, and we'll be back again here with more analysis about on how the situation will be developing. Guys, it was very important that we get to discuss about this with you. so that we can have an idea on how Africa is trying to bring peace in this conflict. And let's wish for the best. If it works, it will be good, because at the end of the day, we will just want peace to be everywhere. Whether it is in Africa, whether it is outside there, peace must just be everywhere. And you know, guys, Africans were just so kind. We are serious. We are so loving. We are so friendly. Normally, these people, we're supposed not even to be worried about us, because you're never gonna tell me where Ukraine come and try to bring peace in Africa. You're never gonna tell me any place. Yes, not even humanitarian food that they can come and supply to all countries that are having problems in Africa. I don't know if I'm wrong, perhaps, but on my own, I never really come across such kind of image whereby someone is telling you that no, this food you are eating, it was supplied by Ukraine government or whatsoever. No, but at least us, we even forgot about what we are going through in Africa, in countries such as Sudan, DRC, and other many places in Africa, like in Nigeria, for example, with Boko Haram. But we are out there trying to bring peace between these two countries. So let's see who's gonna consider this and who's going to reject it. Once again, thank you so much for taking your time to watch this video up to now. I really do appreciate it. I really do appreciate your presence here. If this is your first time to be in this channel, well, I'm wishing you a warm welcome. Feel at home. This is a African home of conversation, where we get to engage ourselves in a very serious conversation around the trending topic that is taking place around the world. So feel free to also hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any of our video, because we do educate in this channel. We do sit down and have a serious conversation that will benefit you and the whole Africa continent. So please make sure that you subscribe and follow us in our social media. But if you want also to become our member, of course, you are free to join this big family where there's many people who are supporting us. It will be very good for us to have you over there. But for now, until I see you again, continue to be yourself, be good, be kind, have respect for everyone in order for you to be respected. May God bless you all. I'll see you again very soon in our next video. Ciao, ciao.